Okay. Now we have one last intro to do. It's funny how that's not how I imagined it in my head. In my head, I thought this was gonna be just like normal.
Well, people like the shambolic nature of this. Is what I've learned.
Yeah.
Just roll with it.
So this is the last. Let me grab water. Okay. So this is the last intro we have to do. Can you say welcome back, everyone?
Welcome back, everyone.
Okay, perfect. And this is episode 5 of the Snack Covenant and part 3 of 3 of Dark Souls Translations with Lokey. And today Lokey will talk about the Lost Sinners. No, the Lost Sinner.
There's only one. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, on New Game Plus, she gets to like ads, so maybe.
Are you for
maybe
real? Did I predict content again?
You predicted something that happened several years ago. Yes.
I am brilliant. Awesome. You know, there's a reason why they call me a brilliant strategist, Richie.
Is that because you call yourself a brilliant strategist?
Yeah, but I didn't start the trend. The trend started when I was playing Dishonored, and I was doing amazing things, such as killing guards from under the table, because they can't bend over, so they can't hitch, but you can sit under the table and you can like slash away at them with a pit. I'm pretty sure that's when it started.
Well, that's in Metal Gear Solid 3 as well. So.
Really?
Yeah. If you're being chased, you just hide under a building, and eventually they ignore you because they can't crawl under it.
But these guys, I didn't want them to ignore me. I was making noise so they come forward me, and then from there I could kill them.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were a brilliant strategist.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Should never have doubted you.
What did I say? Where were we? Yeah. Okay. Lokey's gonna tell us about the Lost Sinner, the bells, Mytha, Shanalotte, and some content. And the code word for this one is Mahula.
What?
That's how it plays in my head every time I go to Majula.
Oh, Mahula.
Yeah, I literally have that word like appear in my head. I find Majula very relaxing.
It is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I guess that's the intro.
Smash that like button.
I love the enthusiasm with which you say it.
Smash the like button. Smash the like button.
Sometimes we have Richard Peelbeam on, but he adds nothing of value to the podcast.
Yeah, it's true. He's a fucking waste of space.
No! Oh my god! No!
He needs to get on your level.
Jesus, Richard. Okay. Let's see. There's an interesting question.
It was about, I think, Lost Sinner.
Right? By John of Vinheim?
Good, we just talked about Vinheim, and it's like,
it's like Destiny!
Segue!
Woo! Richie.
Okay. I've got a question related to the Lost Sinner when you have Lokey on. Do any of the Japanese item descriptions give any additional clue about who locked her up? I've always thought it was Nishandra who did it to prevent the end of the Age of Dark that followed Vendrick.
What? That last part lost me, honestly, so I'll just focus on the first part.
Okay.
Like, I was like, okay, this is it. And then the last part, I was just like, what? So
well, I think the idea is because she's got the soul of the Witch of Izalith, that she could relight the flame.
The Sandra who did prevent the age in the end. Yeah, it's just that
I don't know, though.
It's just that end of Age of Dark that followed Vendrick. That part's what lost me. So, okay, so is there anything in the Japanese to basically clarify? Not really, as far as her, like it's pretty scarce in both. It's because the dialogue is pretty scarce. Period. And there is like the biggest question is, of course, is how much when Shallocore talks about the Lost Sinner, is Shallocore talking about the the Witch of Izalith and how much is she... Because the thing with her dialogues for all of them is she's sort of talking about both and yet neither, because of the way she words and the way she kind of cryptically does it. Or rather, I wouldn't say it's not neither. It's more like she seems to be talking about the original incarnation more than she's talking about the person in the present. Like, for instance, when she talks about the Old Iron King... and it's, what was it, the English put something like, oh, why do men, like, make these castles and all that, they're vain in doing so, oh, there's that vainglorious liar, and he's become Icarus Earth or something right now. So the idea is...
Oh, that, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that there's someone already gone over that in the Japanese. It's more like Molten Earth. It's...
No, the problem specifically is that whoever wrote Icarus Earth wrote it as a proper noun, and capitalized the I and the E, so people thought, oh, Icarus Earth is the name. When it's just referring to the Earth is molten, so it is like Ica.
Well, I can kind of get why the localization would have done that. Not that I agree with them, but I can understand why, because in the Japanese, they basically use emphasis particles that would essentially be the same as either, like, putting it in quotes
quotation
or
marks.
putting it in a proper, like... There's a lot... It's a very broad used sign, let's say. So it's not like something where you can say... it's possible that's what and it's the same thing done with the Rodden, for instance, when she's saying, oh, he's plumb rotten by now. The idea is that there is sort of the intention, and they might have even intended to name the boss that at some point, and then they just went, nah, let's actually be more direct and say just Old Iron King.
Yeah.
But who knows? We'll never know, maybe. But yeah, so what happens is, though, she's talking about Gwyn, basically, more than the Old Iron King. And the Old Iron King only ended up coming in contact with Gwyn's soul after he died, because his body fell in the lava, and the lava is presumably, the volcano and the lava and all that is seemingly the result of Gwyn's soul. Like, it just... The light soul is his soul and his power just sort of melted the earth around it. It became molten. The Old Iron King fell in the lava after it was unleashed by the bullshit demon boss fight, and then we end up getting what's the word? The boss, the actual like the giant lava lake demon boss thing. Oh boy, my Dark Souls 2 hatred is showing.
Dark Souls 2 is the best of the series.
I will fight you on that another day. So it seems like that Shalakor... It's really hard to say how much Shalakor is talking about the Lost Sinner, let's say the actual sinner from, say, Izalith. Because Izalith, as we know... Izalith I've discussed before, and I've talked before in on my Reddit pages as well. She has this history that's been largely misunderstood in the fan base.
Yeah, you have a very, very comprehensive post about Izalith.
Yeah, I've covered that thoroughly. Hawkshaw's covered that to some extent, but I have a huge disagreements in Hawkshaw. Half of them because of actual like differences in analysis, half of them just because of the translation problems that Hawkshaw just didn't have that information at their disposal for working on. So I understand that, but the final, like the bottom line for that is that there's a lot with Izalith that is already hard to understand, and Shalakor, for all we know, is only talking about one aspect of her and not really about the sinner. Because the idea is just, okay, we've erected a bunch of prisons, why do men lock them up? Oh yeah, there's also that sinner there, and then like saying, oh, that stupid sinner who tried lighting a first flame. Okay, so there's already... Okay, so let's say that the Lost Sinner was the same as seemingly all the other characters we encounter, where they only meet the soul after they've already gone through their own similar events, and it's not like they're reincarnations or anything. That idea is not expressed until we get to the Soul of Cinder in 3.
Yeah, that's probably worth dwelling on for a bit as well, because when there's a tendency to assume the four great souls in Dark Souls 2 are literal reincarnations, when it's not.
Yeah, there's no evidence to that for sure. It seems they're just people who've had similar ideas, and then the souls, maybe the souls were attracted because of those similarities or ideas, but it wasn't like, oh, they were born with those souls, and these souls are doing... It seems like these souls are just around, and like they're just sort of, because of their will, and because again, these are some of the most powerful souls there are, and because of the will of the people who of course originally lived with these souls, they seem to end up kind of getting around somehow and moving into
there's a more of an explanation of the Seath one than the others, because you get that whole story about the writhing ruin that came to settle in Seldra. And that's what possessed Freya.
Yeah, and the idea is that that's how it worked, and it didn't really have anything too much to do with the Duke or anything like that. It was kind of like
it's not like it's not like we kill Seath in Dark Souls 1 and then he wakes up and he's a spider.
Yeah, and it's like,
which is what people seem to think was happening. Yeah, it's more like the essence of Seath is then passed on to someone else.
I just want to imagine like Seath like looking at like his exoskeleton, being like, "I have scales." Finally!
Finally.
It's like, I'm not a pale-skinned freak!
Oh.
Yeah! See, he was just like having a rave party. That's why he broke out of the cage and everything. He was just like, oh yeah! Papa's gonna moan tonight! No, it's like, just like, God, please don't ever make me a writer for Souls. I will totally ruin it.
Or make it better.
Or make it better. It's like, Souls is a comedy now. It's just a depression comedy. Dark comedy, there we go. Hey, everyone else in Souls seems to laugh at everything that's going on around them. Why can't we?
Exactly, I agree with that. Right, Richie?
Yes.
Even though laughing is sometimes illegal in the Soulsborne community?
Well, yeah, it's very serious.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I have sinned against our All-Father.
Yeah, we can only approach the story of a dragon being reincarnated as a spider with this sort of quiet, reverent dignity.
So, as we were saying, the question then so besides this idea that besides the idea that Shalakor and the Japanese might be a little more clearly distinguishing them, there's nothing really in the items to really clarify either. All we know is that the sinner is a woman, and this woman has committed something worse enough that she had to be locked up, and she's notable enough, and based on the law of writing, she has to be someone notable, most likely. At least someone of relevance. For the storyline of whatever the area is about. We know that there's two countries that have been in that area. One of them was Strade's nation. I forget, was it not Ascora? Olafus. Okay, that was right.
Olafus. Yeah.
And then there was also the kingdom of Ven. Yes, Ven, because Alkin was the Old Iron King's kingdom. Okay, so so what I really want to talk about that I put in the notes there for you guys was actually that aspect, because that's something that's actually worth exploring in there. Because my impression was always that it was the queen of Ven, and she was the princess of Ven when she and the Old Iron King were not royal, but were not in charge, so to speak. So there's a few things that are interesting to note there. First off is that there's one part of dialogue that got translated as prince and princess when it's actually using king and queen as the characters. So, and that's in the word for prince and princess, but they're different because there's a difference between the king's child and the king. So, that's probably not an accident. And the idea is that, okay, so you had a prince and a princess who were in love with each other in their youth, and they were from two countries. These countries came from the same place. For the sake of argument, let's just say that place was Hyde.
Right.
Or something like that. And then those became their own countries after, say, like, Hyde fell apart, and, like, they became their own thing, and they've been sort of having this split or divide and rivalry or whatever, and it's the Romeo and Juliet story all over again. Well, these two lovers make bells in order to show their love, but over time, they never really get to do that, and then we get into the Old Iron King presumably the Iron Keep and the Old Iron King's kingdom was Alkin, presumably. Both because the geography matches up. I think there's a few items that have to do with that, and then most importantly, particularly in the DLC, Ven actually comes up as what the Old Iron King invaded and took his iron works from. and where he based all of his power. And there's something that's very interesting and specific about that, and that's in, let me grab the line. Here it is. So in the English version, it just says, when the old Iron King wrestled this dilapidated region from the Kingdom of Ven, the act required all the resources the enfeebled lord could muster, but with the discovery of this iron-producing miracle, he was reborn as a powerful leader. So we know that at the time, well, this, again, it's using his name as Old Iron King, but that's really kind of meaningless. It's like saying the coin has All-Father Lloyd's image on it. That doesn't mean they necessarily are by those names at that point.
Yeah.
So what we can say for sure is that the ancient king of iron that plundered this remote region from the earldom of Ven was a weak king. So this is an interesting thing. Specifically, the term used is earldom. And that's notable because it means that it wasn't just like some random spot on the map. This was part of an earl had control of this territory, and it was likely a border territory. And then the Old Iron King took that over. So it was a specific part of the kingdom, most likely from then that they had. And then he had this Old Iron but because he was a weak king, so it's not like he lost all his resources or whatever. It's just saying that, hey, he was a weak king at the time. He only could invade an earldom and take that over. But because he was able to take over that small territory of a kingdom, not the kingdom as a whole, because he was able to take that that earldom from the other kingdom, he was able to become a king that ruled the entire land, due to finding this place where the iron was born. Okay, so that's something. Okay, so Old Iron King is from, most likely, Alkin. And obviously the bell where the Prince of Alkin built is, of course, in his keep, which he then built up with iron and all that stuff. So he basically rebuilt the Alkin kingdom as his iron utopia. The other aspect of this that's notable, though, is, of course, the Mytha part, which is, of course, as this is pretty straightforward. Mytha, like, some people seem to be confused about whether, I've noticed, like, okay, so, like, was Mytha and the Old Iron King a thing, or was it Old Iron King and, what was it, the DLC, not Alsana, not Nashandra either.
Nadalia. Nadalia was Bride of Ash.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, how where all those relationships were, because, well, it's very specific in the Japanese that when, what's his name? Our Laddersmith Gilligan. That's what it was. Gilligan says when he's talking about sort of, okay, hey, this monster. She's of that. When he talks about that castle, he's definitely referring to the Iron Keep, because he says it's the castle that's beyond here. So he's saying that it's not this area that we're in. It's not Earthen Peak or anything like that. It's got to be that castle. The castle that's apparently in the sky when you take a lift. Just saying. Then he takes us from. He then talks about how, okay, so there was a king and he had a queen, but the king was in love with another person. So we now know that, okay, if he's in love with another person, and we consider that this is a Souls game with interconnected writing, then most likely, let's say that Mytha was a noble of a region in the Alkan Kingdom, and that's what Earthen Peak was. And then she married the king. She was married to the prince, and he ended up becoming the king. And he's a weak king, but he's still the king. But then she sees that he clearly has his own love that. And that's presumably the princess, and she becomes the queen of Ven. And then there's this problem where the king takes over a Ven earldom, so Alkin is very clearly the aggressor here. And it takes an earldom. Now, why I talk about this in relation to the Lost Sinner is that it's quite possible that with the whole, where there's already an undead curse that's always been a problem now, and that they've been trying to lock up and deal with away. But what I'm saying is, I think it's worth investigating if this is the Queen of Ven, and she, for instance, either through her negligence or even active sabotage, allowed her beloved to become the powerhouse that he ends up being. And possibly to the detriment of their own kingdom, at which point she would essentially be a traitor. And that could very well be her, and maybe she didn't even think about it at the time, and now she's so regretful because she's like, oh my god, I didn't think things would spiral out of control like this. That's what I think is worth exploring as far as, okay, what's going on with the Lost Sinner there? Because it doesn't seem like there's too much otherwise going on there, because we have to deal with, one, Olafus also became an element involved there, and two, even ignoring Olafus, there's also Dranglake, of course, taking over the area and using it. Which also, Vendrick, like, clean up your territory. You leave, like, all these, like, problematic former countries, like, just ravaging. Like, I don't know how you plan to expand, dude. This is why Aldia was the brains.
Ooh, sick burn, bro.
Sick.
Oh, do you want to talk about the cut stuff that Xenadius K mentioned in his video? Because you did the translation.
Right. That was a fun thing to work on, actually, honestly.
Yeah. Was there anything that you found that didn't make it into that?
There's a few. There's some details. There is some details.
Because I was the one that gave him that chunk of text.
Yeah.
So like I know there's a lot of stuff, there's like NPCs and things that aren't mentioned in that, and I wanted to know if you had translated.
I've worked on
any
everything that he sent me, and that involved pretty much everything Shalakor talks about, everything that Nishandra, both grown up and child Nishandra, who is adorable, by the way. Oh my fucking god, I love her. Yeah. She is like freaking the best princess in the world. I love her. Like, I love her when she whines. I love her when she's happy. I love how she waits for us. Like, literally, like, probably like hundreds and hundreds, who knows how many years.
Is she a Disney princess?
She might as well be, honestly. She deserves it. She's so sweet. Like, I love how cut content makes me love a character more than the actual game.
Yeah.
So Shalakar, Shanalotte, her handler, basically her slavehold owner, and then the scholar. Those were the characters who generally seem to be the ones left in the text to talk about.
Yeah.
All of them have their own details and interesting notes. For instance, like the mortals. Because fans have to understand this, and I've talked about this, I think, before. Actually, this is good because I've talked about it on Discord before, I think. Undead and immortal. I think I've said this before. Undead and immortal
are different.
It's a double meaning that has the same meaning for that one word for undead. That's something we have to get into our head. So, like, that's why scales of immortality and true undead are used for Seath, in the dragons, because there's this idea that there's a double meaning there, that, okay, it's generally immortality. Well, what is a non-dead if not an undead or an immortal? Makes sense. But what Dark Souls 2's content was exploring was an actual NPC named in katakana as Immorta, and it was basically...
Yeah.
It was basically the Immortaru, and it was like, okay, so you've got literal immortals. Okay, so it sounded from the looks of it, they escaped the light, and they ended up from the sunlight and all this stuff on the upper world, and they built this kind of underground castle, and the castle ended up being submerged in water. It sounds a lot like, like it was like they were going for like a Neo New Londo, but with like a different twist on it, and then... based on the use of the term immortals, it's like, okay, yeah, you're undead, but they're like, you can't kill them, like, it doesn't matter, like, they're immortal, so, like, don't bother. But hey, they can be slowed in water and stuff. So from what it sounds like, they were exploring the idea of kind of, like, doing, like, a new manifestation of the dark, and maybe that's what those dark beast things found in with the Varangians ended up becoming and stuff.
Oh yeah, because they're a bit like Manus.
Yeah, so they're a bit like these dark creatures. So,
I mean the Ulasil things.
Yeah. The bloatheads and stuff. So it's
they're like a bloathead without a head, basically.
So the idea might have been that they were gonna create like this other variant of the dark, and it would be these sentient dark. Because they do the same thing with the Gurm, where the Gurm are ostensibly humans, but they're basically made to be like a subspecies dwarf type of thing. Right. Like, and it's supposed to, like, they're human, but, like, they're kind of like dwarfs culturally, and that's how it is. And that was something what's interesting is that it's kind of implied in the existing dialogue, but it's made more explicit in this cut dialogue that Shalakor just has been to these places, and that's how she knows all this stuff. Like, she talks about how she talked to one of Nishandra's handmaids, and she knew and when she was at Dranglake Castle. So it was like, okay, so I knew Nashandra, I knew Vendrick, and I knew like all these people basically is what she's saying. And she has this is the thing that really bugged me. I wish Santa somehow found a way to fit this in. In retrospect, I was like, you know what, we never got to have this. It's that Shalakar is just sitting in a pot the whole game. Like, for some reason, she's like, I like my pot. It's more comfy than this.
Yeah,
and you
she's a
just read the
cat.
dialogue. Like, she just keeps bringing up this goddamn pot. And I'm like, that must be one fucking comfy pot. Like,
Well, that's what cats do in
Yeah.
real life.
so it's like, she's just like, well, I've got my pot. I don't know why you humans want anything more than this.
Yeah, like if
Like
I
that-
put a box on the ground, like Corvo's in
Yeah.
it, and he's like, it's mine
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, and it's like she's complete. Her entire life is completely satisfied, just sitting in that pot doing absolute jack shit. There's also the fact that, and I think Santa did bring this up, was the idea you were going to talk to the cat through a ring.
The Ring of Whispers, yeah.
It would make a lot more sense than. Well, I wouldn't say it would make a lot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it would make a lot more sense, but it's a lot more sensible than whatever we ended up getting with Shalakar, because it's like, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like the idea is there would just be this cat in Majula. You wouldn't know it was significant, and then when you got the Ring of Whispers, you realized the cat can talk.
Yeah, and the cat would
in
talk
a
about
true Dark
literally
Souls
everything.
fashion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actual subtlety. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Okay. Was there anything else? Because
There's a few things because
yeah,
in the
go ahead.
one thing was that it sounded like that, and again I haven't hyperanalyzed Dark Souls 2 lore, so forgive me if this exists in the existing game too, but the way that the dialogue puts it, it sounds like the Gurm were subjugated by Vendrick, and they were basically kind of like his like sanitation crew.
Yeah.
did you
And-
his shit
Yeah,
crew?
they just...
Like they just like all
Yeah.
all their shit and stuff got dumped off to the Gurm to handle, but then that stunk up.
Yeah.
So then Vendrick was like, okay, and he plugged up the hole so they wouldn't have to deal with the smell.
Oh damn!
The way that I read it, which is possibly wrong, is that Vendrick was getting the Gurm to dig the tunnel to this immortal castle under Drangleic. That they were like a workforce.
I don't remember if that's explicit, but it's possible because
Yeah,
the way things.
yeah, that's how I read it, but I'm not an expert.
Yeah, I can't remember if there was
Yeah.
anything that was specifically indicated it, but there was some. But it was the basic idea was that Vendrick was using the Gurm, and I don't know how. If I remember right, the Gurm just are there in the existing game, right?
Yeah.
Like they're just kind of like this underground culture that just is around.
Well, they're not even really a culture. You just sort of, there's one friendly Gurm NPC, and then there's other Gurm that are just enemies in one area.
All right, and then
Yeah.
another idea was, there's of course the talk about Soul Drift Cave and things like that. This idea that souls,
Yeah.
there's talk about demons, which is interesting because it's hard to tell if they were gonna go with like chaos demons or they were gonna go with the Dark Souls 2, where anything that's a monster is a demon.
Yeah.
And that word doesn't have that meaning in this context, because there was also an interesting thing that Santa didn't talk about, which was about Nashandra specifically. Let's say that was going to be shaded wood, and I think Santa even confirmed for me that there was in fact ruins in Shaded Wood, the existing game.
There are, yeah.
It sounds like, according to what they were going to go for, was that there was a temple. Maybe it was what became Archdragon Temple, and they kind of like just was like, okay, let's put it in this like sky area. But the idea was that there was going to be this temple that she had a dragon egg enshrined in. Now, from what I've seen in interviews and stuff, it sounds like Nashandra was more or less still always going to be the cursed evil queen. She just wasn't going to be the big bad. She might have been a side villain, maybe an optional boss, or she'd be like the Sullivan. You had to kill her along the way, and she had this like big role in like the world story, but she wasn't a big plot significant character. But like it seems like the idea was that they had this egg and that they were keeping it and they were like worshiping it, and it was part of like rituals and stuff. And I'm assuming the idea was they were going to hatch the egg. And it's really hard to tell because they don't make it clear. Because keep in mind, we also know from other cut dialogue and cut content that there's stuff about Olafus and ancient dragons and eating things and stuff like that. So I don't know if that was like part of that draft of the world lore as well that they went with, or if they were still like working through how it was all going to relate. There was still the Giants. The Giants were still a big part of the Drangleic lore. There was a big difference in that the Varangians had a very different role in the plot. or more out to say they had a more straight. They weren't just kind of a footnote in the storyline, so to speak. Because it seems like it wasn't just the giants that were a problem when they invaded. It was that with the giants causing chaos and war, then all the thieves and the pillagers and the raiders also came in, and that became the Viking. Because the Varangians, you have to understand, in the Japanese are just barbarians. Like, that's it.
Right. Yeah.
And then the localization was like, oh, fancy word for barbarian, Varangian, Viking people. Makes sense. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
That's all that is. They're the same thing as when they talk about savage tribes or barbarian tribes in other contexts of 2 and other Souls games. So it's the same idea. And the point was that it seems like they raped and pillaged, and there was a lot of bad shit that happened in this. It's basically Undead Burg 2.0. Let's call it the Drang Lake Town. I think that's actually what it's called in game or something like that. And the idea was,
which area?
Yeah. So, I don't know what area it was supposed to be. It might have been its own, honestly. Like, let's say that it might have been like Majula 2.0 for all we know.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But basically the idea...
Because there's a fort, there's that fort,
Yeah.
but that's about it, yeah.
No, I think that fort was its own thing, because if I remember right, that's mentioned in the cut dialogue, too.
That's mentioned. They give it a name. It's called, like, the Shield of the Sea or something.
Yeah, something like that, which makes sense, because, you know,
Yeah.
the statues and stuff and things like that.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
So it's clear that they had that, but from what I understand, like, there was an actual castle town. It's the same as the Undead Burg being the castle town to Anor Londo, because for fans who don't know, Anor Londo in the Japanese dialogue is referred to as a castle, a country, and a city in 3 different instances, so...
Yeah.
So the idea was basically it was basically your city, castle, fortress, metropolis. And they seem to have carried that over into 2 with the idea, okay, you have Drang Lake Castle, which is going to be this big castle thing, and then there's going to be this Drang Lake Town, or Drang Town, or something like that. And then what happened was, the Varangians and shit kind of came in and they raped and pillaged, and they caused all these horrible problems. And if I remember right, there was stuff they talked about, the screams and things like that, and there's a lot of, like, you get the implication that a lot of bad stuff happened, and the castle and Drang Lake Castle basically abandoned the town and let it be raped and pillaged. They were like, oh my god, close the gates, save ourselves, and they left the town to its fate. So there was a little bit more there that was interesting. It wasn't just like, oh, there were pillagers to the north. Vendrick captured them and put them to work. Oh, okay. And then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, there's like even more monstrous stuff further north. You know, like giants. Oh, okay. Great job connecting all that together. Wonderful. So, so that's a thing. And then, I'm trying to think. I don't think that, because there's also this thing, because the idea was that the scholar, and he was, he wanted to get, basically, you to get, like, 2 items,
Yeah, it's the dragon egg and
the drop of time,
he talks about the drop of time, which, like, from what I was able to make of it, he's talking about, like, there's water in a spring.
Yes, and the spring had this, basically what happened was the miner who found the spring had, like, taken a drink of the water, and then he was instantly outside the entire complex that he accidentally fell through, and then basically that's how that story spread about it. And for some reason, the scholar's like, oh, that could totally work for us to be able to time travel with stuff. It's like, oh, okay, if you say so.
Yeah, and from looking at things, the way they describe the drop of time is it's found in a mine.
Yeah.
And that was probably the Seldra area.
Yeah, it was probably, because the idea was that a miner found it, so that was probably intended.
Yeah.
So the idea was probably they were going to make it something where it was like, okay, so like the miner was going through the zone, and then like he came out, he talked about it, they never bothered going back to find it for some reason, and that's that. There is also an interesting aspect with the Drang Lake Castle proper, so far as it's from the way they made it sound. It sounds like otherwise it sounds like the core of the Dark Souls 2 plot had more or less stayed the same, with as far as events were concerned. Like it seemed like they pretty much stuck to that. Their issue was just figuring out everything else that would lead you to that around that plot.
Yeah. The immortal stuff as well, that sort of ties back into the plot of Dark Souls 2, which was about Vendrick seeking a way to break the cycle and break hollowing.
Yeah.
The idea that he might go... the idea that he would go under Drangleic Castle and find people who were undead but also immortal. So probably, as in wouldn't hollow. They were a different kind of undead. Yeah.
So he was like, oh god, like, if we can find like a true immortal, and again, it goes into the dragon research.
Yeah, that they will have the secret of how to break hollowing.
Yeah.
Which is what you end up doing in Dark Souls 2 if you do all the DLCs.
You get the crown,
hollowing.
and he just like, oh, boom, here you go.
Yep.
Blessing. A blessing!
Yeah.
And then boom. But, so the problem is that it's amazing that there was so much dialogue that gave us basics and overviews, but unfortunately there's nothing for, like, little NPCs and stuff outside of the Nishandra thing.
Yeah.
Which was its own interesting idea, because one, it tells us that the idea was that, like, Nishandra basically was always, like, just picked up and used by somebody, and this was just her most recent, master or owner that she had. But then she actually talks about how, by the power, like, she gives us, like, some sort of blessing or something to that effect, by just basically saying, okay, she basically references that, I've got this blood of a dragon and human, and, like, I've got half and half going on in me, and by that power, like, boom, you're blessed, boom. I'm giving you...
So by then, like, you said Nishandra, but I think you mean
Shanalotte.
As in the Emerald Herald. Yeah. Well, that's another can of worms. Yeah.
Nishandra is her own can of worms. That's for sure. She's pretty much is a walking can of worms.
Yeah.
A crawling can. She's the real writhing ruin. To be honest, that's where they should have thrown the name. Anyway, so so Nishandra, Shanalotte was an adorable character, and I love how it's one of those things that would have been a wonderful plot line if they kept. I understand why they cut it, but it would have been wonderful if they find a way to get the spirit of it kept in, because the idea that you meet Shanalotte and she's like, oh, you remind me of this person, and then she like finally is like, oh wait, you are that person.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, because you're gonna be at the start of the game, you're gonna look different with different items and shit like that. And then she's like, oh, it is you. Oh my god, like like it's great. Hey, do you remember me? She does this thing, and it's like, who is this crazy chick? And then you go through the quest line with going to the back in time and stuff, and who knows what plot significance, because the scholar wanted to do it so he could tell Vendrick before all the shit went down, hey, shit's gonna go down, let's prepare and get ready so we don't have to deal with this shit.
Yeah.
So instead of it being...
So the scholar character is someone who was in Drangleic, right? He's like in exile.
Yeah, he seems to have been like the proto-Uldia. Like, instead of like Uldia was the bro, it was this...
That's exactly how I described him initially to people. I was like, he's like a nice version of Uldia, basically. He's like a...
Yeah, it was like before Ondil became a character, it seems like they were like...
Yeah.
And I forget what his name... It was something similar. It was like Bancalad or something like that.
Well, this is the... who?
I think it was like let me pull it up, because I think
The scholar.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember his...
The scholar's name is like, I read it as Belderic, but then
Belderic,
it's
I think something like that.
Sana reads it as Vendrick, because B and V are the same sound, so it's like, oh, it's Vendrick, kinda.
It's kind of like... I think it's like Belderic or something like that.
Yeah, I was calling him Baldric.
Yes.
Because that sounds like an actual name.
Well, there's a lot... The thing is, Dark Souls 2 had so many... crazy name by the way, this is not a criticism. Thank God for the localization of 2 changing these names, because some of these names are pretty fucking off. Like what's his name, Agdane or something like that.
Yeah.
In the Japanese version, he's Agadulan. It's like, what
like
the fuck
Pokemon.
Is an Agadulan?
No, Digimon.
Yeah, he pretty much is a fucking... He's a blue skin Pokemon. That's all.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, who's that Pokemon? It's fucking Agadulan! The edgy Pokemon!
The reason you said Vanclad there is because Vendrick's name is still, in Japanese, it's Vanclad.
Yeah, it's Vanclad.
And they change it. Vendrick is an invention of the English writers. And like, Uldia is Andil.
Yeah,
and Nishandra is Dunashandra.
Like, I just want to say to the Japanese writers, like, why did you take a perfectly normal name and then add "do" in front of it? Like, that was like the dumbest shit I've ever seen. Like, reading that, I was like, what the... Like, it was almost as bad as with 3 and having Aldrich be Eldritch. It's like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
Like, at least try. At least try. Yeah, but like I think Gilligan still had a normal name. I'm trying to think if there were any
Yeah.
like other ones that like I was just pissed me off like as soon as I met them. Like most of the gods have different names. I know someone asked me about Demon Souls bosses and stuff like that, but the only real notable Demon Souls boss name change was the Penetrator. They made it, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it was slightly less phallic in that it was the Penetrate Knight,
Yeah.
so it was like. I guess that's better.
I'd say that's worse.
So it's like you have the Tower Knight and you have the Penetrate Knight. I think I know how that
Penetrate
relationship
Knight
went.
sounds like an eroge. It sounds like a PC 98 game.
No, it's totally an arrow gay. It's like it's just oh my Penetrate Knight, please come at me. Please, go through my defenses. Oh God, it writes itself. Like
That's your new project, Loki.
the Demon Souls Yaoi edition.
Yeah.
That's the subtext of Demon Souls you never knew. I'm just oh God. But like yeah, so like there's all these name changes and differences that happened in the game, but like Belderic or whatever he was called, I forget. He was a character that seems like he was the proto Aldia. He was supposed to be the smart, intelligent scholar character in Vendrick's castle, and he was like, "Oh my God!" He somehow escaped from all the chaos, and it was like, "Oh my God! I left my pendulum bullshit that I've been doing my life's research at the castle." But you know what? I'm going to think about ways I can get stuff that could have made it work in the first place. Oh, you got that stuff?
Yeah.
How convenient. You can now just have to go to the castle and you can use it, and now I can go to... It sounds like there might have been dialogue where we would have had a confrontation with him, or maybe there would have been some way we could have. At the very least, it sounds like you could have just killed him, and he would have...
That's definitely true, yeah. That's what
you might have not been able to do anything else with him. Like, who knows if they were just... It might have been like kind of like the Griggs thing, where like if you don't buy all of the sorcery items, he would just sit there for eternity.
Well, it could just have simply been that if all you needed were these two MacGuffin items, that you could just kill this scholar as long as you got the items together. The thing would still work.
Yeah, that's
He's
what I'm saying. Like as long as like they would have just stopped his questline there. It could have also been that it would have been like maybe there would have been like I don't know, maybe something similar to what's his face from 3, the other sorcerer, and after he teaches you all he can, he basically goes and dies in the archives. Orbeck, yes. And like it might have been something like that, and you would have found an NPC like dead body. Like who knows what was going through their head with that. But from what the dialogue they give, we don't really get to see like the confrontation or anything with the pendulum itself. So it might have just been we go there, we use the pendulum, and then that's it. That's the end of the story.
We should probably clarify as well that when we say we have the cut dialogue, it's not the whole game at all. It's like maybe like 10% of it.
Yeah. It's at least I wouldn't even say 10%, but it's like it's at least the core dialogue of them going, okay, this is what our world is. Let's write now.
It's kind of like how in Bloodborne we've got versions of it that go up to the Grand Cathedral, and then we don't know what would have happened after that.
Right. The idea was it would have been like, because in Dark Souls 2 proper, they basically for some asinine reason decided let's just cut a lot of the context of dialogue that is in our finalized script, so we can make things more confusing, and then no one knows what the hell they're doing. But in the original, it seemed like they were going to still have that same dialogue where it was like, okay, talk to this NPC, they'll tell you, and you'll be like, okay, I got to do this next. And that seems to be what Shalakar was supposed to do once you got the ring. It was supposed to be Shanalotte was probably going to be like the first major NPC you probably would have met, either at the undead town, which has all these, like, it's all this wrecks of Varangians and undead and demons or whatever, and then you have the scholar, who probably was going to be like a Majula guy, that he was probably going to have something like he'd be in the mansion or something, and he would do his...
I assume the mansion because there is a gigantic book, and then you have the ruins of the Lord Vessel from Dark Souls 1 underneath it.
Right, so there might have been some intention there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was it. It's a shame too, because honestly, I actually was really, I would have actually really been interested in them actually really indulge, because I find the best part of Dark Souls 2's lore is in fact like the larger world story they were going for. Because the main plot is absolute repetitive crap. So repetitive crap with more time travel. And it seems like this would have been a more interesting take on it because it was definitely it felt this cut script felt more personal than the journey we got, because that's how Dark Souls 2 was advertised. It was like, oh, this was your personal journey, and then it's like there's one ending and all these questions that they ask you that are asking for your input you don't ever have an input on. So it was like, okay. So it looks like it felt like this was going to be a more personal journey where, like, you were going to be with the Emerald Herald. You were going to build a relationship and figure out who she is, and you were going to save her, and you were going to do all this stuff. And it was like, oh, okay. It seems similar to what they're doing now with Sekiro, with, like, it's like, okay, you are the shinobi, and now you've got your lord.
Yeah, you gotta look after
and it's like,
it.
and now it's like, you know, it's not like I like him or anything. I'm just taking him back because, you know, like, I'm duty. It's all my duty. I didn't raise him from these diapers and get attached to him. Promise. So like that is it seems like they're trying to do that now with something like Sekiro, but like it seems like that was what Dark Souls 2 was going to go for, and I would have preferred that. It would have made it really stand out.
Yeah.
From like say Dark Souls 1. I'm not saying it would have been better. Might have still been shit, but
So, are you saying that Sekiro is Dark Souls 2 too?
Oh, please, you're giving me an association. I never want to associate anything with DS2. Please. You're trying to make me suffer.
Oh, okay. Question. Like, Senator DSK in his video, he talks about you can see an area that would have been, he calls it the original hub.
Yes.
Was that the undead village you're talking about, or was it something?
I have
was it
no
like
idea.
This weird nexus.
You'd have to ask him. You'd really have to ask
because
him. I don't
because like
know
I've
how
been
these
following
things work.
Cut Dark Souls 2 stuff for a long time because the Illusory Wall has done a lot of research into it, and like I knew about that weird like nexus area thing because Illusory Wall had extracted that model. Obviously, doesn't have texture on it.
I think the way Santa put it was that it's in the background still, and he got the models and stuff.
Yeah,
it's hard to tell if that was going to be what the town is. Like, the thing is that we don't have dialogue that tells us what everything was going to be, or how it was all going to work out. So, I think one thing Sana suggested was that the Shaded Woods, the Aldia research facility was going to be the temple in the original, and I don't know how much the original model looked like that. Like, that was going to be Aldia's mansion, it was going to be the Dragon Temple. I don't know how true that was, how true that would be. Versus say like the actual Dragon Temple we end up getting, how much was like new items they made? Because I understand it was like halfway in their development they basically had to rush and be like, oh my god, we gotta kind of like remake everything.
Yeah, they had to remake it using the assets they'd already made for the basically. Yeah, so that's why there's a lot of weird inconsistencies in the visual design and stuff, and it's because they had to start over and just use what was already there.
So remember right, I think Santa was able to confirm that the undead crypt, the undead crypt was originally the immortal castle.
Had a throne room.
Yeah. It had a throne room, it was going to be the immortal castle, and they basically just was like, okay, this is now going to be the undead crypt where we're going to throw Vendrick.
Yeah, and I remember talking to him and saying like, oh, do you think when they talk about a city underwater, that's the Shrine of Amana and undead crypt? And he's like, yeah, it's got a throne room. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
So it looks like that was the idea that they were going for, and then they had to remake it into these things. And the problem is that it doesn't help because one of the biggest inconsistencies in the plot for Dark Souls 2 is that the claim that what's his face, Welliger makes, that like Vendrick went and he got all the souls, and yet those souls and those people who had those souls are still alive, well, and just chilling around doing this. So either Welliger is misinformed, he's lying, or that was a plot hole they completely overlooked. Yeah, or her time's convoluted.
Oh snap!
You know, it's all we're all just going in time nexus, and you know it's all that's why the Iron Keep is in the sky of an elevator at the top of a tower.
Oh. It's actually it's interesting thinking back to Undead Crypt that they do the way that it's described when it was Immortal Castle is these people go under the ground, they're connected to the dark and they fear the light, and then That's still in Undead Crypt, even though they changed what it was.
Well, and the
'cause
same
there's a
thing with
whole thing
Shaded
in
Wood
Undead
that
Crypt.
Santa points out with
Yeah.
the whole, like, the idea was that the thing became connected to demons and they became, like, I think it was like the spirit trees. That's something that's worth talking about. Is like, there's these things called, like, spirit trees or god trees or however you want to put them.
Yeah.
And it's something that I noticed this gets confused to talk about the lore because everyone's like, okay, what is that tree? It's basically just a living tree and it's worshipped. Like, generally
exactly.
speaking.
Yeah.
Like, that is what, like, trees are their own. And like, trees are living things, and they can be animate in Dark Souls. Just accept that as a thing. There's nothing special about certain trees or others that make them like divine. Like, one of them's worshipped as a god in Dark Souls 2 because I guess it had dream powers or something.
And in 3 as well. It's sort of like
in 3,
the Curse-Rotted Greatwood. They talk. It's not That's also in the cut content of Dark Souls 3, but there's a cut item you would have gotten from the tree that just says, this is a tree that's worshipped as a deity by the people in Undead Commune.
Right, and well, and I think it's also in some of the existing thing. It's the same idea in the Japanese text. There is that this is just a tree they worshipped, and that's why it's a spirit tree. Like,
it's a Japanese thing. They're just like, this is a holy tree.
Yeah.
You know,
it's maybe hard to
charms around.
I guess it's kind of hard to describe to Westerners then, because like for me, I was just like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then everyone's like, oh my god, what is this? It's like, no, it's not like it's not like they're these special race of like divine trees or something.
Yeah, people, and the references to spirit trees made people think there was like one sort of like Yggdrasil spirit tree that everyone was.
No, and there's
like
a confusing aspect too, because I think there's one part in with what are they called, the people, like the Viking people in the DLC,
the Millwood Knights.
Yeah, the Millwood Knights. They also have a spirit tree, but that's a different different thing entirely, I think, if I remember right. What do they call it in
the Ethereal Oak?
Yeah, Ethereal Oak.
Yeah.
Let me pull that up. Okay, Ethereal. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so legend discovered it was it had a rotted spirit. Okay, yeah. Harkens back. But I just that these beasts come from their sacred tree. Okay, yeah. So it's the same idea. It's basically the same idea. That the Ethereal Oak is just another idea that this is the tree they worshipped. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's nothing in there that makes it like special or specially doing so. It's just that they had this big tree and they were like, "That's our god. Let's worship it." like
Sora's oak tree.
Sora's, I guess. Like, let's go with that. Like, it's a tree. They worship it. Nothing really to say there. On that topic, actually, with crazy trees, there's the trees we see in Undead. In Dark Souls 2, it's like the witch trees, I think it is. Like, it's the same idea.
Oh, yeah, the witch trees, yeah.
It's the same idea. It's like, it's just a tree. And I guess one decided it was going to be a sorcerer. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw...
Well, that's apparently Sullivan's backstory in 2 is that he's born from a tree
this
lady.
is actually something we could talk about.
Cool, okay. Good, my favorite character.
Yay.
My favorite character in my favorite DLC of my favorite Dark Souls game. Pontiff Sullivan in Ashes of Ariandel.
Are you being serious? I'm actually curious.
No.
No. Pontiff Sullivan is favorite after Yorshka.
Oh, I see. Well, good news, Richard. I can tell you this. Sully is probably not a tree.
What?
Yeah?
Yes.
Oh, snap.
Sully
What's up with his wings or whatever, then?
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the tree woman. So there's this thing where unless Sully's a Gwendolyn, that's the thing. So the thing is that the tree generally says, when it says, like, let me pull it up, the weeping tree or something like that.
Yeah, they're just called birch women in
Okay, here
internal.
it is. Weeping, the weeping tree thing that I have on my notes. Okay. So Cassandra handed me the dialogue for this, and I wanted to look over it for my sig. So there's this thing where the tree keeps on going, I'm sorry, my dear child, your place to belong is nowhere. And of course that's referencing to the whole idea of place to belong in the painted world.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, and that's generally gender neutral. Until we get to the death line. And then the your is female.
Ooh.
Ah. So who do you think it is referring to?
Is it supposed to be Yorshka?
No, I'm not... Is it supposed to be Yorshka? I don't... I don't know what the intention is with the tree or finding the next to one weeping tree with the sorcery. So again, maybe Sully is a tree person, but you can't use that cut dialogue as your evidence.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not that. Again, I know people like to say it's not cut. I'm not going to say it's cut. You have to ignore it. But I'm saying that the Japanese dialogue is very clear that it's a female.
Yeah. Sullivan has tree imagery on his design, and his wings that come out the back of him look like branches. But if you've been following what Lance McDonald's been doing with data mining, it looks like Sullivan, that character model, was created to be a completely different character who would have been the final boss. So the reason he looks like that is because he was somehow connected to, like, the arch trees or something.
Well, it looks like the current character... Because, well, one of the reason I couldn't understand the tree thing on the face of it was that Sully looks pretty... For the most part, he looks human. Like, he has got, like, that... His skin and everything. It doesn't look like he's just a walking tree. Then you could say, oh, he used magic to kind of, like, become a closet tree man. It's like, well, that's... Now we're... I guess it's like, well, I guess the Ornstein conspiracy, anything could happen, but
yes.
So the problem I had with that was that he seemed for the most part just a human dude, and then he has branches, and it's like, well, everything is one, he's got the dark thing going on with him, and he's been corrupted. So, and that's supposed to be, if I remember right, even the boss's damage values start changing to have dark attacks once he hits that phase. If I recall.
Yes.
So
I think he does.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it's just that the dark took over, and because the way it's rotting, it's similar to the dark wraiths where tree stuff is growing out. Because it all has to do with how it's not just time that's becoming stagnant. The prolonged cycle of trying to keep the fire alive is causing the entire universe to literally start stagnating, and it's causing the dark to become the deep. It's causing a lot of problematic elements in the universe. So much so that Koth had to change plans from, okay, we need an Age Dark, to, okay, we need to get rid of the fire, to, okay, we need to start kind of going through this complicated process to getting the world back on track. So, yeah, so I'm glad. Hey, great job, Richard.
Yeah.
You gave me a segue to cut content I haven't talked about yet.
Okay, cool.
Except that we've been going for 2.5 hours.
Let's do another one another day and have more questions and stuff, I think, because we didn't get through everything.
Yeah, because I'm trying to keep these podcasts a little shorter now, so I don't, kill myself editing. You know me so well, Lokey. You said it before I did. Yeah. So I think we could be done for now, and then we get more questions and talk again another day. How about that? Thanks so much for coming, Lokey.
Thank you.
Wonderful having you.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear you talk, because it's cool to make sense of Dark Souls. It's almost like we don't hate it again.
Let's not go that far.
Well, don't worry. You now have Sekiro to hate for all of eternity.
No, actually, ever since Richie told me that Sekiro may not have leveling or whatever, I love it. No levels, no weapons, no stupid magic. I love it. Oops. I'm all about it.
Okay, but
okay.
What if
it
doesn't have levels, so when you hit a boss that's too hard, you can't just level yourself to get past it. You're going to have to actually adapt.
Do you know how persistent I can be, Richie?
Yeah, but I also remember you fighting Seath doing 20 damage per hit.
And what did I do? Was I persistent? Did I win with 1 HP?
Well, that's technically accurate.
So I was persistent. I had literally a sword that did no damage. I had 1 HP left, and then later you told me I had a flask, but I didn't even notice that I had more health. So, and then I beat him.
That was one of the best That was one of the best live streams I ever got the opportunity to watch. I'm not gonna lie. It's just Richard doing all the work, only to die, and somehow, by some miracle, you somehow were able to pull it off.
Yeah.
So, I remember too, because we were all like, "Oh no, she's dead. It's over. It's done." He did it!
Yeah!
Oh, that was great.
Oh.
So thank you again, everyone, for you guys for having me. I really love being on here.
Thank you.
It's great. I can't wait. I hope we can do this again. So it was fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alrighty then. So, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Richie, we forgot to do something.
What did we forget to do?
You know how now we do intros, we also have to do, like, outros?
Yeah.
So, like, ideally, you would have said, like, thanks for coming, Lokey, and then you would have told everyone to check out Lokey's social media in the description or something, and then mentioned that us too, we have social media and stuff.
Yeah. We didn't do that though, did we?
Well, you should do it now.
Thanks for coming, Lokey. If you're listening to this when it's out, thank you for coming. Lokey's social media is in the description, and so is our social media, including Sinclair's Discord, where you can join and talk about things.
Perfect. Thank you, Richie. Do we say bye?
What is this?
Do you have to say bye to people who are listening?
We could.
Is it implied or no? Because I watched. Okay, well, this is what I'm gonna say in the other podcast. That's gonna be the first one, but we're actually recording it second.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I guess we could say bye. Do we wave?
We say smash that like button.
Okay, so he doesn't have much to go. If I get cursed, I think you can probably beat him.
Well, don't! No, that's not how it works.
I can't... No, I'm gone. Because he hit me with the huge curse. Because I was trapped in between his tails when the giant AoE curse thing happened.
I do like zero damage, though, so I don't think you understand...
Oh, for God, if you die at this... He has, like...
No, you...
5% of his health left.
Somebody in chat, please explain to Richard how little damage I actually do to him. Because Richard
Am I going to have to go and
understand.
get you a better weapon and give it to you? Because I think that's going to have to happen. I'm not joking. I am actually going to have to find a better weapon and give it to you.
Richie does not understand the gravity of the situation he left me, and someone explain, please. I'm assuming somebody's explaining in chat, because I can't actually look.
Well, I can't see the chat either. Okay, hang on.
Oh shoot! I don't understand.
Oh my
how to
God.
Get out of this. Yeah.
Did you actually die?
Well, it's coming.
Oh God.
People in the chat will attest that I tried my best.
Oh.
But
Okay. Okay. What are your stats? What's your strength and dexterity?
Oh! What the fuck? How did this? See, it's you casual. You fucking.
Did you actually beat him?
Oh my god! Oh my god! How is this possible? How can I send you a screenshot?
Oh, thank God!
I will
I'm
take
so
a
relieved.
picture to
Okay,
show you.
okay.
No, Richie.
Here's how it's what
Richie,
happened.
I will show you how
What
much
happened?
health I have. I don't understand how this is humanly possible. I just took a picture with my phone because I don't know how to use PlayStation. I thought I was dead, but I just kept hitting because the Soviets never give up or whatever.
That's true.
Oops. Oh, what is this ongoing call? Let's see. Okay. So he wasn't dead yet, and this is what my
Oh my
health...
God!
Do you see it?
You have 1 pixel of health left.
How cool is this? And you should have seen I was doing like 10 or 20 damage to him. Oh my god. This is the most amazing moment of my life. I'll need to take this clip, this boss fight, and like put it on YouTube as the most amazing thing ever. Now I'm going to ceremoniously...
Lobos Jr. is going to watch it and be like, well, I give up.
Yeah.
I've been replaced.
I'm going to walk ceremoniously toward the bonfire. Okay, you ready? You're going to have to sing a music in the background.
Do 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 do. I don't know the rest of it.
Perfect.